third edition of our Guest Talks webinar series. It's great to see so many of you listening. First of all, I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsor, 5 A Day Fitness, winner of the GESS Award in 2018 for the best product to promote health and fitness in the classroom. 5 A Day Fitness provides socially distanced, in-classroom, 5-minute fun fitness and 2-minute chill-out online follow-along routines. There's no teacher prep required and cross-curricular language learning options included to promote physical activity and healthy minds and bodies. There is a free trial available, and I'll just post the offer for you all now. So if you want to find out more, just click on the Find Out More button and that will take you through to the free trial. In addition, in the handout section, there's a PDF you can find more information about 5 A Day Fitness. A few bits of information about the webinar before we get underway. For all attendees, you can find a control panel, which is white. If you've attended our webinars before, you'll notice it looks slightly different as we've got new software. There's a Q&A tab, a polls tab, and a handout tab where you can find further information from our panelists and sponsors. During the webinar, feel free to use the Q&A, ask us questions. The panelists would love to hear your thoughts. We'll do our best to get through them. If we don't manage to get through them all, the system saves them down and we'll get back to you after the event. If you want to enjoy the webinar all over again, you can do so as we'll be uploading it to our YouTube channel and sending it out to all attendees by email. We'll be on social media as well during the webinar. If you want to chat to us there, follow us on Twitter @GESSEducation and use the hashtags #GuestToBuy and #GuestTalks. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel. Our chair and moderator, Niall Statham, head of PE, Hartland International School. Apollo Perelini, High Performance Director for UAE Rugby Federation, Director of Apollo Sporting Academy. We've got Naomi Keighley, Head of Ballet, the Ballet Centre Dubai, and Sam Strickland, Principal, the Duston School, UK. Thank you, and over to you, Niall.
Great, thank you very much. Great to be here with everyone today. I've been looking forward to this webinar for a while now because we've got such a fantastic panel, and of the 4 of us, I'm the person that you want to hear from the least. So my role today is going to just be to keep these questions bouncing between these 3 fantastic experts as best I can. So a big theme of this webinar is to do with well-being. So we're going to start along the well-being lines and just check in with everyone quickly. So Naomi, you're in the hot seat first because you're at the top of my screen. So first of all, how have you been? How's the lockdown been for you and your well-being? Because what people probably don't know is that Naomi's normally based in the UAE, I think, but you've been uprooted to the UK somewhat unexpectedly through this whole process. So how have you been getting on?
Yeah, I have. I've been sent back to my parents, where I've not been for 10 years, which has actually been really lovely. I think it's been the best place to be, really, during lockdown, with that kind of family support. It's been challenging, kind of like up and down. You wake up one day feeling really motivated and really focused, and then the next day you just want to stay in your pajamas and eat chocolate all day. But I've found what's really helped me is, I'm in a beautiful part of England where we've got lots of countryside. So I've been fortunate to be able to go out and go on walks and just clear my head. And yeah, it's helped me just stay focused, really. And then we have been doing online classes for our dance students. So that's just been a really good direction to get stuck into, really. Yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
Right, and then over on the other side of the world, Apollo. Apollo didn't need to wave in the introduction because I think when we were all introduced, only one of us here looks like a high-performance rugby manager and a former World Cup rugby star and a Super League winner. Good to see you, Apollo. Obviously, different experience for you being in the Middle East. So you're in the UAE in Dubai at the moment, along with me, and you've gone from the hustle and bustle of running an international rugby program and an academy to a full lockdown. How have things been for you?
Yeah, I think that originally when it all sort of kicked off in mid-March, I think we all were in a state of shock. We didn't know how long it was going to last, and we use the word uncertainty sort of came about, and it gets kicked around. You know, this whole time, you know, everybody's uncertain, and when I think about the uncertainty that we've gone through, and I think personally, I've grown in this whole period, and it's been exciting, really. And people say, "Well, have you suffered?" And I said, "Yeah, we suffered financially as a business. We went into six figures, you know, loss in the first couple of months of lockdown, you know, and to be still smiling at the end of it, you know, it was down to sort of just looking at the positives. You know, we're growing and contributing, and the amount of work that we did during this lockdown period we created a community, and so we created a community with all our customers, our kids, our parents. We created a massive community that we served free of cost. You know, it was a free of cost community. All it was connecting, stay connected, and that was the key for us staying sane, but also, like I said, contributing. If you're not contributing, you labor around and you get lazy and you get into a comfort zone. And so this whole period, for me, the uncertainty has actually given me a better challenge, and I've come out of it better with new ideas on how to grow. And we set out tasks for our kids, like you said about, you know, it's all about mental health throughout this whole period. Now, people were filming all sorts of content on fitness online, but I actually got our kids to come up with and design their own programs, and I called it Kids to Kids, rather than adults leading the way with video content for kids. I got kids to perform video content, and it just showed that our coaching was coming out on the kids, because they were actually looking at, you know, what the objective of the drill was and what they were trying to get out of that session, and they were leading, and it was brilliant. And it was we were posting it on Instagram, Facebook. So this whole community really helped everybody stay intact and grow from it. So yeah, it was a good time, actually.
And in terms of community, Sam, you're principal of Duston School, which I think I'm right in saying has got 1,700 students. That's a big old community, and I imagine this has got to be close to principal's worst nightmare. This whole situation of going from creating bubbles in school, literally learning an entire new way of working. How's that been for you?
Yeah, it's been a real challenge. If I cast my mind back to March, I think probably at the end of February, start of March, we thought something's coming, and all the warning signals were there. And I think optimistically, we kind of hoped we might dodge the bullet, but kind of really realizing we probably were not going to. And then it felt monumental having to close the school down. Just the amount of work that went into that was kind of like nothing I've ever experienced before, if I'm honest, because it's kind of, you're bringing something to a halt. But then almost on the spin of a sixpence, once we closed the school, it was then opening up a new school, having to open up this like online platform. So it's kind of like two schools in one. Plus we've got key worker pupils and vulnerable pupils who've been in since lockdown all the way through all the holidays, all the bank holidays, which is, you know, totally understand, and it's the right thing to do. But it's been trying to kind of spin two schools in one. And then as we moved into June, we've welcomed back, yeah, it's all changed again. We've welcomed back early year pupils, year one pupils, because we've got the whole spectrum from early years to post 16, year 10s, year 12s. And now we've had the documentation for September released last Thursday. So it's now kind of almost trying to build yet another new school on top, because everything's different, and we've had to change all of the parameters around which we're going to work moving forwards. So there's been a lot of communication that's been needed. There's been a lot of stress around all of this. It's made me think a lot about a lot of the nonsense that we engage in as a profession, and the impact that might actually have on staff kind of longer term, kind of a lot of unnecessary meetings. I just think about just one example, training. There's been so much free online training, like today, to be fair, that you can access like that, without having to commute halfway across the country, spend more time in a car than you do at the conference.
Yeah.
I think that may well revolutionise actually how we do a lot of things. And I look at like my PE department, they've done a lot of online, and it's been led by the teachers. And actually, I love the idea that Apollo said about pupils, children teaching children. That's amazing from that perspective. But they've done a lot of online stuff to try and keep pupils in a routine. I even think about sort of things like Joe Wicks, the idea of, I know it's a bit sort of cheesy, I suppose, but 30 minutes of HIIT training a day, the difference that can make to everybody, actually. So I think there's a lot of lessons to learn. I just hope you don't forget.
Absolutely. I think there's definitely, in terms of something we'll come back to later, but the role of physical education and some of the things that have become really popular and really valuable during this can't just be seen as short-term fads or short-term fixes. There's definitely some things to keep here. Something that people who are tuned in might not know is that our three hosts have all got incredible backgrounds in sport in their own right, and each one very different to the last. So while we've talked about routine and things that PE departments have done, and even Joe Wicks, I'm wondering, through all your specific sporting backgrounds, how have you called upon lessons that you've learned from your own competition in sport? Have you at all? Have you gone back to training regimes that you had maybe a few years ago that you've dusted off? So if we start with Apollo, so Apollo is for people who haven't met Apollo before, he's played in the World Cup. He's a dual code rugby internationalist, a Super League winner. He's transitioned from league to union. In terms of rugby, he's done about as much as you'd ever hope to do in the game. Have you found yourself relearning lessons that you learned when you were playing rugby, or calling back on things coaches have worked with you on?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we talk about setting goals, and every day I was setting goals. I was setting goals most weeks, what I wanted to achieve, and I was setting some physical goals. Look, I went through almost 20 years of professional rugby, training and playing. That when I retired, I didn't want anything to do with the gym. I was so tired of it, and that. During lockdown, I pulled the old rowing machine out. So again, and I set myself some goals, just like you did, Neil. And I was churning out a lot of mileage on the rowing machine, something that I hadn't done for years. But I was setting myself some goals, which I hadn't done. I hadn't done any physical goals for a long time, and that really kept me really fixed on every morning. I knew what I wanted to achieve that morning from a physical perspective, because throughout the day I was always on Zooms. I was Zooming with kids, and I was Zooming with parents and coaching online. That I wanted to set aside at least the first hour of my day just for me. And so, yeah, it was good. It was a good period.
Yeah, fantastic. And Sam, a third degree black belt, is that correct?
Yeah.
I mean, I dabbled in kickboxing, but my strategy was more tire people out by hitting their hands with my face as often as I could. Which, as you can see, it didn't work out great for me. But obviously, that martial arts surrounds itself with self-discipline. Is that something that you've gone back to, or perhaps never left during this period?
Yeah, I've always tried to keep as fit and active as you can. I would argue that since I've been a senior leader within the school, the amount of time I've been able to devote to my martial arts has significantly reduced. I used to train like a madman, to be honest. I used to run sort of 4 or 5 martial arts schools in the evenings, and I had to tail that back when I became an assistant head. I think what this has done for me, though, I mean, a lot of, with being locked down, we've not been commuting in the way that we would be normally, and that takes anywhere up to about an hour and a half a day. And I took the view, because I'm so sort of stationary in the day in front of a screen, talking on Zoom or Teams or whatever to staff and typing emails, and it's kind of a slave to a laptop. I've kind of taken the view in this lockdown window of I need an hour to an hour and a half of just something that physically is going to allow me to move, because I'm not walking the school building, gaining 20,000 steps like I would do normally chasing after pupils or whatever it might be. And I've devised a really clear routine of going for a run every single day. And and a bit like Apollo, just setting a personal goal really. And mine was about just a little bit of weight loss. I wouldn't say I was ever particularly big, but I just thought I actually want to lose about half a stone, and just to reduce my body fat slightly. That was just a personal thing for me, and I've used this time to do that by just having a really clear routine. I know that HIIT training and running and some bench pressing, I went and bought a bench before the lockdown, was going to make the difference. And it, I don't mean in an arrogant way, it has. But now the challenge, of course, as we go back to some sort of normality, is to keep that going and for that to be just part of my normal routine and not to slip back into bad habits.
And Naomi, in your background as professional ballerina and professional dance, obviously, when you talk about competitive sports to make it and to get to that level, and you look at the figures of people who actually managed to achieve that, you must have gained some incredible insight in terms of self-motivation and discipline. Have you found yourself going back to that, or rediscovered any old mantras?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the question about just drawing from my previous kind of training and things, I think one big thing has just been to stay positive, because I think as dancers we're taught, injuries are very common. If you don't get that audition, that job, you can't let that knock you. You've just got to keep pushing and staying positive. And I think that's something that I always carry with me anyway. So I think the lockdown situation is just a curveball that's been thrown, and it's something to learn from. So I definitely think my training has brought that to the forefront here. In regards to myself and my own health, I had a back injury actually about 6 months ago. So I just started doing Pilates, and that had been really helping me. So I've focused on taking an hour out of the day to keep up the Pilates and not kind of let that injury creep back in. And then also, I mean, as a dance teacher, I'm quite hands-on. I get quite kind of pokey and proddy and manipulate the kids' bodies into the right places and things. And teaching online, I've not been able to do that. So it's been a massive development in my own teaching whilst being online, because, the power of my voice and actually articulating everything verbally has had to really improve. So I've definitely developed that side of things. And then on Fridays, I was doing like an unset ballet class. And it was my favourite thing to do all week. I would, with the senior girls, and it just gave me an opportunity to kind of dance with them. Rather than being so technical on things, I would do the exercise, but then I would be there with them dancing it. And that's been amazing for me to carry on, keep up my own dancing as well, just here in the kitchen, using the kitchen counter as my bar. But no, it's been brilliant. And no, I definitely think from just dance is so disciplined in itself. So I've seen how my students have coped with the situation and how amazingly they've been able to adapt to dancing in their bedrooms, to being in the studio. And I think it just shows the training that they've received up to now has helped them, be successful during this lockdown period, and really learn from the situation,
Yeah, absolutely. Although in a past life you were a director of sport at a large through school, so knowing what you know now, having been through this experience, having seen the power of the Kids Teach Kids and the alterations that you've made to your academy community, what do you think? Do you think the role of exercise and sport and well-being in schools is going to change now, based on what you've seen now that it's come to the forefront of everyone's attention?
I think it's going to become more important. I think a lot of schools have taken it for granted that what PE and what sports contribute to the development of the child. How the students can learn a lot of life lessons through sports or activities as such. I always talk about the kids. During the lockdown, I got all the kids together. There was about 60 of them, and and I asked them questions on what do they want, and all they wanted was fun games. They just wanted to just be. It's the connection that they miss, and it's their human connection. It's the laughter. It's the camaraderie that they have in the playground, but they love the competition. It's interesting when you sit and talk with students. What they want to see is it's not about winning. Don't get me wrong. It's not about going out there and trying to win. They just love competing against each other. They go like games, and it doesn't matter what it is. And to sit there and listen to these kids, what they wanted to see more of in school and what they wanted to see more of in my trainings, which was quite good for feedback to help me with my delivery of my sessions. It was very, very interesting because, if you can unlock the mind of a child, I tell you what, you can change a lot of things, within a school. And I'm sure you've seen that, Sam, during this time, that you've seen a lot of creativity. And that's the thing is that you see more creativity out of kids. And when they've come up with ideas, and I ran a virtual camp, and I ran a virtual rugby camp, and don't get me wrong, it was so hard for me. The kids loved it, but I had to demonstrate. Now, a 50-year-old demonstrates some of the positions that I had to get into, but it was challenging, but fun, but also it's what they wanted to do. It's what they wanted to see. And I think, and what they wanted to see when they got back to school was connecting with each other through activities. And I think that's the key for my learnings during this time that the kids want. And it was just listening to them. That's all it was.
Yeah, I really like what you said about they want to compete, and we'll come back to that. But I think there's a lot to be said for the regular low stakes competition is what they want. And I think when people find out that kids want to compete with each other, sometimes you can get carried away with your head and think, well, it's got to be high stakes tournaments, winners take all games. But that's often not what they actually want. That's taken it 180 degrees in the other direction. What they want is the chance to compete against each other, win, lose, and fail, but with nothing really attached to it other than the learning and the enjoyment, which is what it's supposed to be about in the first place. Naomi, where are you going to focus most of your efforts with your students when they come back in? That's a bit of $1 million question, but to sort of prompt it a bit, we read a lot in the press about the gap and about well-being is going to be important and physical activity is going to be important. There are 101 different places to start depending on what information you happen to read at the time. What's going to be priority for you in your role?
Yeah, I mean, we work towards exams at the Ballet Centre. So we hold yearly exams, usually around the March period. And it was so devastating because our children had worked year round, and sadly the exams got cancelled a week before they were supposed to happen. So it was really devastating, and I think we all actually went through a slight moment of grief with it because we just worked so hard for it. And I know all the students doing GCSEs and A levels have felt the same with that situation. But I think going back, it's usually we would, that's what we do. We work towards our exams, and that for the children, that's almost like the be all and end all, and parents as well, actually. And sometimes they lose that kind of love for dance and actually the reason that they're there. And it's made me think about it a lot, as you say, when we go back, and realizing that really we just want to get back and get together again, and build that relationship again, and just enjoy what we're doing. Yeah. And that's going to be my main focus, 100%. Just I miss that connection with the students, and to really build their passion again and just get them moving in a space that's not just their bedroom. I think it's just about building passion, isn't it? And just enjoying themselves, and realizing that an exam or like we said, a competition isn't actually the main focus of why they're there. It's just to help their well-being and be happy, really, isn't it? So that would be my main focus, I think.
Yeah, I think it's easy to forget when you've got a bit of, there's a zero-sum game going on of exams, and there's one fixed point of exit about everything that's happened in the interim. We look at all the different exams and events that were cancelled. We can't forget about the 2 years of preparation and learning that have gone on in there. That suddenly doesn't become worthless because we haven't sat we can't write off 2 years of learning because we missed a 2-hour exam at the end of it. There's still been fantastic achievements there. Sam, big fan of your book number 1, to give it a plug, Education Exposed. And I was reading with interest about your resilience, aspiration, respect culture in your school. So looking at the resilience aspect of it, you should be in hopefully with the work you've done beforehand, you should be in quite a good place coming back into this with the foundations that you've laid.
Obviously it's a big challenge, isn't it? Because it's after any big holiday, it's challenging enough in a school to get your culture back to where it was before the holiday. And this is the longest break we've probably ever had with the kids, for any of us. And I think we've got conflicting pressures at the moment, and I'm sure it's probably the same where you are. But we've got the government's narrative of catch up, and that's all with all the documentation that we've got and what's in the press. Everything's about catching the kids up, not allowing it to be a lost generation, making sure that the exam groups do really, really well in 12 months' time because they're not going to suspend exams and accountability. So we've got kind of a short term, medium and long term sort of set of pressures in many regards. In the short term, kind of in that first month, I think it's about getting the kids back in, recalibrated into routines. And you're absolutely right, resilience is going to be huge. The staff's resilience, my resilience, the pupils' resilience to go back to some semblance of normality, even though it's a new normal in many regards. Then you've got that kind of medium term pressure. And I think we've got to be really careful just how we phrase this with our kids, especially our examining groups it's not everything should be about exams. In the eyes of year 11, 12 and 13, those exams are so important to them personally. And I think it's showing that we're putting out all the stops to help them, but without going crazy at the same time. And that's a really, really difficult balance because we've got that finite pressure of really about 8 to 9 months to get them ready for those exams. And then we've got more, I would say, longer term. What going back to what we talked about a few minutes ago, and one of the other questions about what we learned from this window, what can we actually take forwards? If I look at PE contact time in schools, it's about 2 hours a week for secondary phase pupils. I mean, if we're talking about obesity, we're talking about health, we're talking about well-being, is that really enough? We really should be doing something every day. I look at the Australian model where they do something every single day. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't in England. And why is that really? I think there's something we do need to think about. Obviously, if we do that, something else has to go. But it's back to that kind of opportunity cost of, well, what's actually really important and what's not so important? What's kind of gumph or bump that we can get rid of that actually doesn't add any value to our kids, and actually allowing them to have a sense of competition, allowing them to have a bit of a sense of freedom, allowing them a bit of fun, and allowing them to stay healthy is probably the most important thing above anything else, especially at the moment. But I think in that initial phase, it's about reassuring the kids we're there for them, and showing our resilience that we've not all crumbled as staff, to inspire confidence in the pupils that we know what we're doing and that everything will be okay. And it's such a hard balance,
absolutely. And as a leader in a school, you're coming off the back recently of some of the best A-level results in your school's history. You're going to have, I imagine, a very, very motivated group of teachers there, but also very conscientious group of teachers as well, who are going to be worried about, there's the worries of the kids, then there's the worries of the staff as well about how they're going to get in there and worrying about missing coursework. As a leader, what are you going to be encouraging them to do or not do, as it were?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a massive workload charter as a school, which is a senior team commitment pledge to the staff of things that we will do to support them with their workload or to get rid of. So, I mean, one of the things I inherited when I joined the school was just endless mock exams. We had 4 cycles of mock exams over the GCSE window, and we've reduced that to 1 since I've been in post. Emails at weekends and holidays, we don't do them, and we, excuse the pun here, but we prefer face-to-face, which is difficult, socially distanced face-to-face. But I think that's really important, so that your email inbox isn't always pinging. And I know that's been a challenge while we've been locked down, that emails have just gone through the roof. But we need to get back to, in many regards, what's these lessons to learn. We also need to get back to really good habits of what we were doing before. And what we've said for the autumn term to Christmas is the only meetings that will take place in the week are departmental subject meetings. Everything else, forget. The direction of travel between September to Christmas is just to get the kids back in, recalibrated in our culture, and for you as the teachers to teach them. Everything else is irrelevant. I don't want 1,000,001 data captures. I don't want quality assurance central, where we come and watch you to, within an inch of your life to see what you're doing. We trust you. Just get on with the job. What we'll do as a senior team is make sure the kids behave. And we'll be in the corridors, we'll be in and out of classrooms, we'll make sure that everything is as it should be. We're there to reassure the staff as well, and try to act a bit like an umbrella, really, to the shower of dross that kind of funnels down and descends on everybody. We're trying to protect staff from all of that, so that their core job is their core job. We've slightly shortened the school day as well for when we come back, deliberately, so there's less, I guess, after school evening commitments, directed time to allow staff to be able to go home and shut off and relax. My mindset with this, especially with just the where we're coming from in terms of the starting point, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And you don't try and blitz it in the first month, otherwise your staff are burnt out. And that big term to Christmas is a horror term at the best of times. Then you've got COVID in the background, and then you've got the fact we've been locked down. We've got to take our time and be really, really careful about how we go about things. Yeah. So it's that kind of long-term sustainability approach, really.
Yeah, and I think if you took any other kind of analogy of whether you need to catch up or not, but any kind of injury or layoff period, what you definitely wouldn't do is go back straight in at full intensity as quickly as you could again, because you'd be asking for trouble. Naomi, you're going to have, obviously, dances. There's so much a practice element to it and constant refinement of technique over time. So you're going to have students who are coming back who've accelerated beyond your wildest imagination, and you're going to have students who've maybe done nothing in that time period. You're going to have staff coming back who've had the absolute lockdown of their life. They've learned a new language. They've been with their family. They would do it again if they could. And then you're going to have people who've been on their own. I'm fortunate here. I've locked down with my family, with parents, but some people are going to have had a miserable time. It's going to be a challenge for you, isn't it, to pull all this together?
Yeah, like everybody's had different experiences. I have to say mine has been quite smooth sailing. I know some of my colleagues have had a little bit more up and down. We're just working to get back to Dubai now, and waiting to hear a bit more information from schools in Dubai, so that we can start to formulate our timetable at the Ballet Centre that's going to really work well for the students and the parents and the timings and things. We're going to have a mixed bag of students that have come online and students that chose not to. I think, in all honesty, because we've not been through this situation before, I think I'm just going to get the students in the studio and see what I've got in front of me and work with that. But there's just no pressure. Like I said, it's the main goal is to just get everybody back. And we really feel at the Ballet Centre that we're like a family. We try to really work with the parents and build great relationships. And I think we just want to, however cheesy it might sound, we just want to get the family back together so that we can work from there. Formulate something that's going to work for everybody, teachers wise, students wise, parents wise, and go from there. It's like we said, I think with schools and things like normal schools, you have to probably put a lot more things in place. Like, fortunately, being a dance school, we have to first play off whatever the schools are doing, and then we can just slot in as necessary. And in a way that works well because we can please everyone in that sense. So yeah, that is the plan.
Yeah.
That's
To me,
quite
it doesn't
good. I mean,
sound cheesy. I think if you're values driven, like you clearly are, resorting to those, going back to those values is going to be important. And if one of your values is community, and it sounds like a really a caring community place, then I think your students are going to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Apollo, do you want to come in there? I mean, you've seen me come back from pre-season in all sorts of shapes and sizes. You've dealt with this before.
No, I like what Naomi was saying. Yeah, it is about a family. It is about keeping your community together. And that was our main goal. 2 weeks into the lockdown, we realized that there were so many families who were in a situation, we're all in it together. And we decided to draw them all together and keep that family together throughout the whole lockdown. And so we created what we call our COVID community. And to keep the family together and to keep in contact with the parents and keep in contact with the kids. And it was interesting. I was just listening to Sam, how, looking at the plans for the kids to go back in September. When I chat with the kids, because they don't see me as a threat because I'm not a school teacher anymore and I'm not involved with the school. And when we sit and we chat over Zoom, I get all of them all on screen and I ask them, what do you miss the most? And they miss school. They actually miss school. They miss going in, they miss structure in their lives. And that was really interesting when they actually became honest with me. I said, what do you miss about school? And they said, structure. I went, good on you kids. And I guess that's where the school does play a massive part in the development of the kids, from that sense of their mindset of how they see school as a place where everything becomes leveled, and it's a place where they can go, they see their mates, they engage with student teachers and teachers as such. They have a hierarchy that they look up to in the senior leadership. But they also got their mates that they can interact with on a regular basis throughout the day, and that's what they miss. And it was interesting, and that's what we also. The whole community thing was also that there was a lot of people losing jobs, and parents finding out that they no longer had a job throughout lockdown. And I was able just not trying to offer my support to the parents, but offer the support to the kids, because the kids don't understand, and so that was really important for us to have that community that, okay, then don't worry, I'll sort the kids out. If you guys just with your families and your friends around you, you guys can, sort life out from an adult perspective. I'll sort the kids out, let me, continue this communication and open line with the kids. And it's worked really, really well. And like I said, contributing has really, really helped me grow as a person. And the kids have been really inspiring me to become a better person out of it.
Yeah, and I think it's a timely reminder, isn't it, that school sometimes for some students is the most structured, most caring, most community part of their lives, and we do well to remember that sometimes, and that if we want them to achieve well in anything, or anyone who wants to achieve anything, consistency is important, and routines, establishing a routine is key to consistency. And it sounds like that's something that you've all been doing in your own way, in your own knockdown experiences, whether it's your rowing machine or your regular Zoom calls or walks or getting back on the bench press. I think we all crave it to some extent. I know for me personally, I had a couple of weeks of a cream egg when I was going round the shops and one for the walk home. And I had to get past that point to get that routine and get that consistency back in life. To change pace on it a little bit, and looking at achievement on the other side of sport. Well, we've got this sporting panel together. For the people who are watching or listening who are involved with what they consider at the time to be elite sport, or people who are striving to get to that top 5%, top 10%, which some of you guys have reached, how do you encourage drive for excellence without going too far? And it's something that I, as a PE teacher and someone who's been involved in youth sports, something that I care a lot about, and I think is a real difficult balancing act. But Sam, I'm gonna come to you first, because from your book, what I like about it again is that your mantra of encouraging them to just do the best they can with every piece of work that they do, and I think that's a key piece to this puzzle to start with. If that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean that in terms of that drive for excellence, whether it's academic, whether it's sport, whether it's a personal goal that you want to excel in, I think it's about taking lots and lots of baby steps. When you think about the big picture, what it is you want to achieve, I'm going to make this up, but perhaps not. I want to play for Aston Villa Football Club. That's my aspiration, to be a Premier League footballer, or to be a Northampton Saints rugby player, which some of our peoples have got with their aspirations. The big goal picture, when you look at it at face value, is huge and it's daunting. Or I want to get 4 A stars in my A levels to go to Cambridge, as another example. When you see that in front of you, that can be really daunting. The flip side is having that perhaps visible somewhere in your bedroom at home could be a motivational tool to actually inspire you that this is the daily thing. I'm working in my big sense to this, but it's back to what is it you're trying to achieve in small manageable blocks. What do I want to try and achieve today? What do I want to try and achieve in the next morning? What do I want to try and achieve this week, this month, maybe in this quarter? Because it actually works in that way, doesn't it? If I think about sport and my build up to becoming a black belt, when I first got my first black belt, I had to train probably about 24 to 30 hours a week of just martial art training, let alone the gym work I was doing as well. And I was at a point in my life where I could do all of that because I wasn't a teacher and I was at university. So I shouldn't say this about my university. I had a lot more free time to be able to train. But it was knowing that each day there was a set routine, a set structure. I knew I had to wake up at a certain time to go and train. I knew I had to go at a certain point to the gym to do various bits and pieces. I knew I had to make sacrifices as well. I wasn't really out and about on the pop in the way that some of my friends might have been, because I was valuing what I was doing. So there's also those kind of social pressures, aren't there, as well, with your peers, that you've got to try and navigate your way through, and having someone to mentor or coach you through that. I mean, I was really lucky. I would argue that at that point, my martial arts instructor back then was almost like a dad to me. And I nearly called him dad at one point, which is a bit weird when you're sort of 19. But, in terms of the tutelage he gave me and the guidance, it was so important. And I think, again, thinking about it in a school context, it's about setting small goals that are manageable, that we don't engage our kids constantly in high stakes testing, high stakes challenges that make them feel rubbish about themselves. There's a place for high stakes, of course there is, but it's about managing that so it's really, really measured. And when I think about what might be happening in schools when we go back in September, and I've seen lots of schools talk about instantly putting kids in exams to see what they know from the lockdown phase. Well, most kids probably won't have learned that much, or there'll be a real bandwidth. There'll be those that have done everything we've set them to do and will be flying high, and there'll be those that have tried to do everything we've set them to do but don't get it, bless them, because they've not had our explicit instruction. And there'll be those that simply just haven't engaged because there's a whole range of reasons. And I think throwing them in like the lion's den from word go, all that's going to do is that it will divide your school cohort up with those that can, those that maybe can, and those definitely that can't, and make them feel even worse about themselves. So I think it's a lot of it is about coaching, mentoring, almost parenting in a positive sense, your pupils, whatever field it is that you're in, to strive for excellence, but do it in a way that's manageable but reassuring, but also to know you're going to have setbacks. There's things you're going to get wrong. Again, thinking about it in a sporting sense, I think to when I ripped my groin, and I was out for 6 months. For me, that was like the end of the world, that I couldn't get ready for my 3rd degree black belt. And I was absolutely distraught about it. But that happens, actually. And it's one of those, it sounds really harsh. You just got to accept it, because you will get those kinds of setbacks, whatever it is you're doing, and it's what you learn from it to move forwards is actually the more important thing.
Yeah, and Naomi, on setbacks, dance and possibly ballet in particular is notorious for it. You could be constantly putting yourself out there for roles and shows and performances, and you can get 20 or 30 no's before you might get that all important yes. And hopefully I'm right in saying you've had a fantastic career and you can look back on it with fond memories. Have your experiences along those lines, though, has that influenced the way that you work with the children and how you work with the ones who have got those lofty aspirations to be professional dancers, professional ballerinas?
Yeah, I mean, like Samuel said, I think you have to teach the children to strive for excellence. And I think what I notice about children now is the kind of lack of self-belief that they have in themselves. I mean, I don't know if that's children now or that's just children in general. But for me, I think as a teacher and an influencer in this sense, it's important for me to pass on first not only just my knowledge to them, but also my passion, and to have them grow this passion inside themselves. And then I think only then, once they have it themselves, can they start to believe and strive for that excellence. You know, there's so many stories of dancers, and I think there's been something in the news recently about gymnasts, and in lots of different disciplines where there's so much pressure put on a child that maybe physically has that potential, but because it's been not necessarily grown within them, later on down the years they might make it, but later on down the years they are, you know, mentally quite, you know, just not in it, and that's so sad, I think. So I've probably gone off topic there. But I think in regards to knockbacks and falls and things, if you have taught the children to, you know, believe and to be resilient and be persistent.
We've lost you there, Naomi. We'll come back to you.
And
I'll give you.
Then they're able to deal with these as a negative. But so they're able, with the knockbacks, they're able to not necessarily see it as a negative, but to take that and turn it into a positive and grow from it, and then actually be better. It's kind of a situation of, you've got to make mistakes, haven't you, along the way to grow. And I hope that really through dance they learn that. You know, you don't get something right straight away in dance. It, like you said, it's years, hours of dedicated training that's put in, and then eventually you look back and you think, oh, I couldn't do that step a month ago, and it was so hard when I first learned it, and now I've managed to achieve. So it's that process of learning, and these knockbacks just help them, you know, climb the ladder, really.
Yeah, and Apollo, rugby's obviously got that different slant to it, because there's the team element to it as well, which is maybe less prevalent in the martial arts and the dance. And you've seen, including your own children, you've seen some fantastic rugby players who you and I have both worked with come through your academy. You've got a bit of a job on your hands, I always think, particularly in rugby, to block out some of the white noise that comes from those other, from parents, from club coaches, from people that maybe, not that their opinion isn't as important, but maybe you haven't sort of done it or haven't had the same experiences as you. And these children that do want to make it in sport, talk about conflicting opinions and influences and people shouting at them from the touchlines. How do you navigate around all that?
Yeah, there's a fine line. We always speak to parents about this fine line of being supportive and then being over pushy, and there are a lot of pushy parents, unfortunately, and the only casualties that come out of it is the child. And what I always say to a lot of parents, and through my academy, I've learned, and parents have come to me for help, basically because their kids are talented. But I've always said to them, look, ask the child what they want. And I think, when it comes to goals and aspirations and future, I think it needs to be child-led as opposed to the parent-led. And sometimes the parents are taking control of that situation, saying, this is where you can be, rather than saying, where do you want to be? And look, I'm a parent in myself. I've got 2 boys, both were very aspiring rugby players. I never pushed them because they always saw that it was my job. And, one of them now is in New Zealand pursuing a rugby career. He signed contract in Auckland as a 20-year-old now, attending university. But you see, both my boys, and they never listened to me. It didn't matter whether I could be the world's best coach, but I was the white noise in the background. It wasn't because I was pushy. It's just that I never stood on the sideline. I always stood on the ends of the pitch, because I never shouted to my kids. I let them get on with it, and I wanted parents to learn from my the way that I allowed my kids to participate in sport and allowed them to develop on their own. And because what parents don't get is that the same voice that they hear telling them to go to bed, do their homework, do the dishes, clean up your room, they ain't going to listen when they say, get up and make a tackle or do this. And that's where the parents don't get it, And so I said, you're the same gong, the noisy gong in the background again, that they hear at home. And so that's why I probably both my boys, I only coached them for one season, because I didn't want them to hear my voice on the sideline too often. And it's so important. Look, what I say to parents, I said, let your child, going back to what Sam was saying about having a mentor, have a sports mentor, have an academic mentor. Both my boys had sporting mentors. It wasn't me. And both my boys had academic mentors. And it wasn't us, because me, academic, please. It's very important that you let other people take the lead on, being a mentor, an uncle, let an uncle be a mentor for them for sports, let somebody else be a mentor for them for their academics. And it's good because kids will listen to that, and they'll be challenged, but they'll much listen to somebody else as opposed to listening to you. And we set goals, and I always say to kids, look, set your goals, and similar to what Sam was saying about setting goals, having that vision where they want to go. And when we talk about pursuing excellence, I said you can only pursue excellence if you know where you're going, and you know the steps to get there. And the only way that you can do that is by setting those visions, setting the goals to achieve those visions, setting the steps that achieves the goals, and then having the tasks to achieve the steps. And I said, I was doing that demonstration to one of the boys just the other day, and I said, listen, if you want to be the best rugby player in the in your position, you got to have a pass left and right. And I said, and your goal is you want to be the player, you want to pass left and right. Therefore, your steps are 3 times a week, you're going to pass the ball 100 times, 50 left, 50 right. Your your task is to get your dad at 6 o'clock when he gets home from work to do it. And so lock that in with your dad, and there's your tasks, your steps all done in order to achieve your goals. And once they hear that, they go, oh, that's achievable. And I said, yeah, those are just the processes. And if they continue to work like that, the world's their oyster, and they can achieve what they want to achieve.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm gonna come to each of you now with a bit of a curveball questions that I've been coming up with while we've been going. But Hopefully nothing too difficult. You should be able to.
About to go.
You should be able to answer them comfortably. All hopefully within the theme. So Sam, I'm going to come to you first. In terms of well-being, and it touches on, I think, Kate Jones, who sent in a question about routines. So we'll try and pull that into it as well. I'm sort of directing this at people who are entering the teaching profession for the first time, newly qualified teachers.
Yeah.
Boy, what a time to be coming into the teaching profession.
Yeah. Gosh.
If you could give them a message, people who are watching this who are perhaps moving schools or going to work with a new group of students in terms of looking after their well-being, what would it be?
Yeah, I think stay true to yourself in the first front. Don't try and just adapt yourself as a person to the setting that you're going into. And I think about the times I've moved school, I made the mistake in one setting of trying to adapt myself to what the school, kind of the way the school was. And that was the wrong thing to do. So be true to yourself, ask for loads of help and advice, I think is the other thing. Don't feel like that is a weakness. That's actually a positive thing, to be asking questions and to be asking for help. You're not going to know everything about the new setting. You're not going to know how the systems work. To be fair for everybody, it's a bit of a level playing field that everything's changed and everything will be new and everything will be different. So there are no stupid questions. And I think if you're going in as a brand new teacher, absolutely ensure you've got a mentor. If the school hasn't set you up with one, that you can go to kind of day in, day out, week in, week out for help and support. Equally, from your own perspective when you're at home, and this is easier said than done, and I'm just as guilty of this, but creating time for yourself, because the job never ends. There's always a bag full of stuff that you could be doing, that you could always be improving on or whatever. But do create some time for yourself to unwind. And I would argue, whether you're sporty or not, even just 10 minutes of light exercise just to get your heart rate going every day is so important, just for your own well-being and your own fitness and health.
And Naomi, for people who might find themselves in a similar situation like you, they're suddenly going to be pulling together a team of people, be it students from their dance family, as you referred to earlier, and community. What advice would you give to them, to people who are sort of scratching their heads going, well, I've got someone coming from over here, I've got kids coming in, I've got staff coming in from different countries?
In safety, we have implemented, we've got to have a 2 meter kind of distance between. So we've taped off the studios, so the students will dance within like a 2 meter box, if you will. And then Dubai have actually been great in being quite informative on exactly how we need to structure things when people go back, to make everybody safe. So there's like a one-way system coming in. I imagine there'll only be a limited amount of students allowed in each class at a time. Masks, I know, will be worn, I believe. Again, I think because I'm just slightly out of it in a different country at the moment, once I get back, it'll be like all go. But yeah, there's many different things that are going to be put in place to make everybody feel safe. Yeah. So, but it's just important to get back, isn't it, and just get exercising and doing things that we love in a safe manner. And I think we will be able to do that. All right. So. Absolutely,
yeah, and I think you're keep inside of that family and that values community approach that you've got there. People should feel confident going back into it, shouldn't they? And they can trust what they're going back to. Apollo, perhaps the most difficult one at the end for you, for people that are questioning. There'll be people saying, "Well, do I want them to go back to it? Can you give me a 30-second soapbox here on just why we want children to be involved in sport and competitive sport? Why do we want them doing it?
Because it's got to teach them a lot of life lessons, build stamina, build strength, helps kids learn from failure. We were talking about before. It teaches them about values, and those values you take into adulthood. And sometimes the teamwork that you become engaged in sports is the same teamwork that you're required when you go into the workforce when they get older. So yeah, sports it's a big learning platform for everybody. That's
Fantastic.
it.
So just before I get kicked out of time here to pull it all together, we've heard from the panel about the lessons that children can learn from being involved in sport and how important it is to their, not just their physical well-being and their mental well-being. And we've heard from various experts today who've been at the top of that sporting pyramid, if you like, and who are still drawing back on lessons that they learned from their time competing in sport to this very day. So I think there are so many reasons there to have children involved in sport and activity and to be confident getting them back out there. We've also heard a lot today about prioritizing your own mental well-being and your own health as well. And however difficult the challenges that are in front of you, whether you're reopening your business or working out how your school is going to function, if you don't make time for your own well-being in this, you're not going to get very far. So making sure that you do take that time, whether it's your 30 minutes, as little as that, 30 minutes a day, something that's going to contribute to your own well-being, whether it's exercise, whether it's going out for a walk, whether it's reading a book. I think that's something that really underpins all this process, not just for students, but for adults, whatever sector you're in or whatever walk of life you're in. And I think that brings us to our 4 o'clock time limit.
Been awesome.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. That was brilliant. Really inspiring. I'm sure we'll all be off now to go and pull on our lycra and get our hearts going. If any of the audience have any further questions or would like to connect with our speakers, send an email to marketing@gesseducation.com. You'll also be sent a short survey and an email after this with other details on if you want to contact us. We'd love to hear your thoughts and what you'd like to see for the next webinar. Thank you again to our sponsor, Fibre Day Fitness. Don't forget to try out their free trial. And a massive thank you to our panel and our audience. We hope to see you again soon. We'll be doing more webinars. So keep an eye on our social media at GESS Education and your inbox for more information. Take care and bye for now. Thank you.
Bye.
How do you say goodbye on this side?